Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another Inside IRT's Admissions Process webinar. This is the third webinar in a series of 4, and tonight we're going to talk about recommendations for the IRT application. My name is Brittany Zorn. I am the Arts and Sciences Program Specialist here with the IRT, and I am a proud IRT alumna from the summer workshop class of 2013, going on my 7th year as a staff person. And I'm joined by my colleague. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Definitely. I am Leislie Godo-Solo. I'm the Education Program Specialist here at the IRT. This is my 21st year with the organization. I am IRT alumni class of 1991. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, so as we dive in, this is an overview of tonight's webinar. We're going to look at the application, some screenshots from the application that are related to recommendations. So if you haven't actually gotten to the application yet, or if you have and maybe haven't seen the recommendation page, you'll know what to look for. We'll talk about how we evaluate our recommendations and the ideal criteria for a 5 out of a scale of 1 to 5. And if you remember from the first webinar in this series, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't yet seen it, go back to YouTube and watch Inside IRT's Admissions Process Webinar 1, overview of the admissions process, and you'll know. Then we're going to debrief who, when, and how to ask for recommendations. We'll also look at the application one more time just to confirm where you can see that your recommendations have been submitted. And then we'll have our final 2 closing slides, a reminder of how to submit an application and where you can go for additional information.
So this is the page that you'll see when you're actually in the application and the recommendations section. And you're going to be submitting 3 academic recommendations. Are required as part of your application. And for IRT, what we're going to need is the name of the individuals and their email addresses. And then our system will automatically prompt them to answer a form. It's not actually a set letter of recommendation. It's short answers that we ask them. And there is a Likert scale as well, which is when you answer strongly agree to strongly disagree. Okay, so these are some questions, about 10 that they'll answer about you and about your interest in graduate school, and then the short essay responses they'll provide. So when you go to that page, when you're on that page, you hit request button, and it'll take you to another page where, again, you're going to fill in the names and the email addresses of your 3 recommenders. I should mention that if for some reason a recommender cannot fill out the form, at any point you can go back and change the name of that individual to another name. Okay, so don't get too upset if, well, you want to get upset, but you want to get upset and then do something about it. And so if a professor tells you that they're not available to submit that letter, you can go back in and change the name and have a new prompt sent to a new professor.
Okay, and so this is what it looks like when you click into one of those recommender slots. So on the previous slide here, you see where it says resend and cancel down at the bottom, because this applicant whose screenshot we took, a picture of their application, this last recommender, Leislie Godo-Solo, was requested on 11/25, 2020, and hasn't uploaded their letter yet. So say we want to cancel that and enter in a new one, this is what that screen looks like. So I could put in, Brittany Zorn. Okay, Leslie's too busy. She's doing too many things. She's changing the world. Let me put in a new recommender. And so this is what that looks like. So just so that you can see both the pages and you can have that recognition within the application, what am I looking for? Where do I put in the information?
So the recommendation form, as I mentioned, will ask them to complete about 10 questions that are the Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree to strongly disagree. And those questions deal with character, commitment to education and diversity, and competitiveness and readiness for graduate school. So under character, what we're looking for is your ability to be resilient, adaptable, open to critical feedback, passionate about your work. These are all skill sets or qualities that we look for in our students, because this is a pretty weighty process to go and apply for masters and PhDs. And the students that do the best through this process are individuals who are resilient, who are adaptable, who can take critical feedback, and translate that into making the necessary corrections and revisions. And then the passion about your work, we want that to come through as well. And that is what we're looking for in this section. In terms of commitment to education and diversity, we're looking at your academic experiences, what types of research opportunities have you had? If work experience is relevant, we're going to be looking at that. Let's say if you're in education and you've been teaching for a number of years, and now you want to go on for the principalship or for leadership, the work experience is going to be important. And then finally, what are your professional goals long-term? How are those goals going to benefit the particular field and the students that you're going to serve? And then we're looking also to get a sense of your critical thinking and analytical skills and your ability to, it's hard for me to see the
ability to make a significant, unique contribution to the field.
Thank you. Yes. So what is the contribution that you're going to be making? How is it different from previous contributions? How does it add to the conversation about a particular field? I'm sorry, about a particular concept or topic within your field?
I think the only thing I'd like round out this slide with is saying that we created a recommendation form because we were specifically looking for these three major bullets. And sometimes recommendation letters don't necessarily include these specific content areas, like especially a commitment to education and diversity, since that is so central to our mission and we're pretty mission-driven folks around here. You know, we created a short form that is, like Leislie said, 10 Likert scale questions and a handful of short answer questions that are like very specific to these things that we care about. And so if your recommenders are griping or moaning about, well, I already have a letter for you, can I just submit that? Or, sometimes we have students who reach out and say like, oh, my recommender is like, inquiring about, he's having a hard time with the form. Is there any other way they can submit it? You can at least explain the logic for why we have the form instead of just a generic letter. It's because we're a really mission-driven organization and we really want to get at the heart of the why you want to do the work you want to do, and make sure there's alignment there.
And they are able to upload the letter if they want, in addition, because that longer letter is actually what the graduate school is going to be looking for. So if they've already started that, they can attach it, but we really do want to hear their thoughts about these three areas.
Exactly right. Okay, so as I alluded to in the overview, this slide details what a 5 looks like on your recommendations. And so just in short overview from our first webinar in this series, we evaluate all of the categories of our application, the components of our application on a rubric out of 1 through 5. And so we're sharing with you what it looks like to get a 5, the best score, the ideal score that you can receive in any one category. So a 5 in recommendations means that the recommenders provided strong, specific supporting examples of the applicant's preparedness for the IRT process, for graduate study, and for their intended career. Again, this is in response to our specific questions asking about these things. Your recommender placed the student, you, in the larger context of their experience. So the student is in the top 5, 10%, the top 20 students that I've ever taught of the semester in my class, etc. The professor remarks on the reflects on the remarks of their colleagues. And so, you know, this student is well regarded in these other contexts that I know of, that I hear about, or that I'm familiar with, that I've seen them get accolades for. And recommenders detail the relationship with you, the applicant. So they're specific about, this person took my class, I oversaw this project, you know, we first met during XYZ conference experience. So if the recommendation includes these 4 components, then you're going to receive a 5 on your recommendations.
So who do you ask for letters of recommendation? We do suggest that you need to request a total of 3 recommendations. And we encourage students to really secure 4, just in case something happens. Secure 4 recommenders is what I mean. Because oftentimes something falls through with one recommender and you're left kind of in the lurch. And if you've had a 4th person on notice, then you can easily pivot to that individual. And at least 2 of these letters should be academic. And that means they should come from a professor who is emeritus, meaning that they're kind of retired, a full professor, associate professor, assistant, visiting. These are kind of in order of how you want to, from the best person to ask to the least. And I don't mean to, I'm struggling because there is a hierarchy. But so for some of us, you know, we've been out of school for some years. So, you know, it may be difficult to get any of these, or it is an adjunct instructor or a graduate teaching assistant. I would say reach out to us. You know, in that instance, we can talk it through and determine if there are any other options. But ideally, you should have 2 academic references. At least 2 of them should be from professors who have taught you. And again, if it's been a number of years, you know, maybe you've just gone back to take a course in something. So you're interacting with the lecturer or adjunct instructor, or perhaps a graduate teaching assistant. But yes, that's the order in which you would ask for the letters of reference. And then your 3rd reference is a professional recommendation. So this can be, if it could be your supervisor, it could be, and your supervisor and your principal is all the kind of the same thing. But these are more the roles. So this person can be in a leadership role, they can be in a supervisory role, and they could be a professional colleague, peer, or mentor. Okay. And that is more so for our folks in the education field. I'm sorry, I'm having a difficult time tonight speaking. I'll try to be clear. Yes, but that is not to say that the person who is going on for the PhD, you also could have a professional recommendation that is, let's say, for example, if you work in the lab and you're in psychology and you've been closely working with a graduate teaching assistantship, who can talk about the work that you've been doing in the lab specifically, you would want to include that person as your professional recommendation. And then you also would still want to have 2 letters of reference from professors who have actually taught you psychology coursework. So I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would, sorry, Mama, didn't mean to cut
No
you
problem.
off on the end there. The only thing I would add to this is just to reiterate that, you know, the struggle over the hierarchy, like, yes, traditionally, there is sort of a hierarchy of who constitutes the strongest letter of recommendation writer. But oftentimes the conversation we're having with IRT scholars, once you're like working with us and we're in the process, is who's best to write for you, right? So we have this hierarchy that kind of exists like as the standard in graduate education, but y'all have such diverse experiences, come from, you know, not everybody comes out of the womb going straight into a PhD program. And so the journey there is not always linear, as Leislie was alluding to, with like being out of school for some time or having, you know, a significant amount of professional experience. And so like ultimately the best letter is someone who knows the content of your character, the quality of your work, right? Like in the end, a graduate assistant letter that is strong and detailed and specific and like is many years, you know, is the result of a relationship that took many years to cultivate, is better than just like a Joe Schmo generic letter from the department chair who's just like, yeah, admit them, they're pretty good. Like, you know,
Right.
so I want that to be the takeaway from
Yes.
this slide, that like, you know, there is sort of like a standard of like what is considered the strongest and who's the best. But like in the end, each one of you is going to have your own perfect package of recommenders, you know, your own set of 4 people who know you really well, who have years of work with you, who have seen you in different settings and who can really articulate what your strengths are for a graduate program. So focus on, you know, the relationship that you have with them, probably more than some of these other things, I think.
Definitely.
All right. How to ask. Obviously you want to be professional and polite. If you have not like had interactions with this person in a while, if you are out of school for a few years, or maybe you took a class with them early on in your undergraduate career and now you're graduating and you haven't taken another class with them, or, you know, maybe it was from a temporary position that you had, a job that you had that just lasted a short amount of time and it's been many more months or years since that time. You want to put together a nice, thoughtfully crafted email. So a soft introduction, you know, hope this email finds you well is the cliche, but that can look like a lot of different things, right? Like hoping health and wellness, you know, are finding you in 2023. Happy New Year. Hope you're staying warm, you know, depending on where you are in the world. And then you put your ask in there. You know, here's my tidings, my blessings, my well wishes to you. I'm reaching out because I'm applying to this program and, you know, I need to identify at least 3 recommenders. You know, we have this relationship, you and I. We worked together in this capacity. I really thrived in your class. You know, you exposed me to literature that's still influential to my thinking and my scholarly perspective. This job that I held under your supervision gave me these skills that I'm still improving upon. Something personal about why you would ask this person, because recommenders have definitely been requested to write for people and then gone, why'd this person ask me? You know, like, I don't know, who is this person? Like, I, you know, yeah, okay, they were in my class, but like, why'd they come to me over somebody else? So give them that information up front. Explain a little bit about like, you know, I really want to recommend it from someone whose class I took, you know, you oversaw, you gave me a really good grade on a paper I wrote, whatever. And then make your ask. Would you be willing to write a strong, positive letter on my behalf? And then in the case of IRT, you would probably also want to indicate that it's a recommendation form, not a generic letter. So, you know, would you be willing to fill out this recommendation as part of my application to the IRT, and, you know, in a strong, positive way? You may also at this point want to or need to explain what IRT is, depending on who you're asking. And, you know, it's a program that will assist me applying to graduate school. These are my graduate school goals. I want to achieve this degree, have this kind of impact, do this kind of work. For your convenience, I have attached my most up-to-date resume or CV. use, like, so that you can see what I've been up to and that I'm prepared for the task. Thank you so much for considering my request. Wishing you a warm holiday season, sincerely. And that's your template right there. Soft intro.
Yeah, she just wrote it for you. I saw someone taking notes.
And the recording will be available so you can play it back later. And yeah, I think that's all we have to say on this slide.
Yeah, you just make mention of your transcripts as well. You want to include your resume, CV, and or transcripts. We're going to talk shortly about the difference between the resume and CV. The other thing that I wanted to mention, going back to the letters of reference, this is not the time to get the short reference letter, which is like a paragraph. That's not what the grad school is going to be looking for. Right. So if you know that that professor doesn't say a whole lot when they write a letter of recommendation, that's not who you want to ask. You want to ask the individual who's going to write a book about you. And when I say a book, I'm talking about like a page and a half, page minimum, to 2 pages.
Agreed.
They should be able to talk about you on the variety of levels, your academic prowess, your research, or your work experience, that you're doing these things on campus that are also related to the field that you want to go to or that you want to pursue. I just wanted to add that this is not the time for that generic 1 paragraph stuff.
Totally. Okay.
So when to ask? Now, yesterday. You want to contact your recommenders tonight, tomorrow morning, first thing. Give them as much notice as possible. No need to wait. We know that February goes by so quickly. It is definitely the shortest month in the calendar. And March 1st will be upon us in no time at all. So don't hesitate to start putting out feelers for individuals who can write you letters of reference. And in fact, you want to give them a deadline ahead of the March 1st deadline. So perhaps February 15th, February 22nd. Basically, what you want to do is you want to be able to check for the letter. And if it's not there, you still want to have time to reach out to them again and say, hey, I need this yesterday. Okay. We also are aware that sometimes the recommender doesn't get the letter out in enough time. Yep. If you know that's going to be an issue, just reach out to us. We're not in the habit of trying to make this more difficult than it already is. We'll try to work with you as best we can.
Okay. So in review of the application itself, when you actually log into the application, this is what your applicant profile page looks like. It's kind of like the home page of the application. And we wanted to reiterate what Leislie said at the beginning of tonight's webinar, which is even after you've submitted your application and even after you've inputted 3 names into the recommendation slots 1, 2, and 3 here, you can come back to the applicant profile and still make amendments to your recommenders. So as Leislie was just saying, if you know someone is delinquent, like it's the day before, 2 days before, they haven't submitted the letter, they told you they can't submit the letter, whatever the case is, you can still come to your profile, put in new information, and then you can email IRT and say, I just put in a new 3rd recommender, please, oh, please, is there any way that if they get it in, by like mid 12:01 on the 2nd or whatever, can you still accept it, or whatever the case is, right? So you can still make changes to your recommenders even after you submit your application proper, and it's all done from the applicant profile. And just make sure you communicate if you have any concerns about your recommenders getting all their recommendation forms in.
So submitting an application, attend an information session online is one of the first things that you want to do. And as Brittany said, those are all on our website. And then you want to go to the online application, and you're going to need these materials to upload to that application by March 1st. The resume or CV, unofficial transcripts. Don't spend money, don't spend time and energy getting official unless you don't have unofficial on hand, or unless you can't access them via your laptop. In that case, if you have to, because you just don't have them in your possession at all, and you have to order official transcripts, I would order perhaps 2 or 3 sets so you have them on hand, because it is very likely that when you actually start applying, you may have some schools that require the official, and you'll have them on hand. Yes, Brittany.
That would only be if you're not in school currently, because by the time you actually apply to graduate school, if you're still in an undergrad program or a master's program, you would need a new set of transcripts anyway.
That's true. Yes. And we need transcripts from all institutions, including your undergraduate, any graduate institutions, if you have a master's already, or master's coursework, any community college transcripts, any study abroad, and summer coursework. Particularly with study abroad, a lot of times the study abroad will show up on your undergraduate transcript, but many of the schools will want to see that coursework directly from the study abroad place as well. So I would go ahead and try to get my hands on the transcript from the study abroad, knowing that it is also under your own, that it is also on your undergraduate transcript, but you don't want them to hold up your admission because you didn't have that study abroad transcript. Okay. If the case is that the study abroad doesn't exist, the individual transcript for study abroad doesn't exist, it's only on your undergraduate transcript, then you can make note of that somewhere and let the graduate school and the department know that my study abroad courses appear on my transcript only. This group, this organization does not provide its own standalone transcript. Okay. And then there are a number of essays that you will have to complete. These are short essay questions about your professional history, your research experience, your theoretical framework, and your goals for future graduate study. Those are also part of the application. And then the 3 letters of recommendation, which we've talked about. And because you all are so special, there is no interview this year. All in the past, we always did an interview with every single student who applied. We're not going to be doing that as of this class. Okay, and so concludes the summary of what we've given you so far around inside IRT's admissions process. Next week will be the deep dive on the components of one's academic background, which is the final category across which we evaluate our applicants. Again, if you remember from the first webinar, all of our contact info here, all of our socials down there, find us on the web and in Outlook. All right, so that's what she wrote, folks. How are we feeling? Thoughts, questions, reactions, reflections, ruminations, qualms, queries, inquiries, testimonies, thoughts? Can I keep going? You're welcome.
I'll take accolades and compliments too. Absolutely.
Yes. You forgot that one.
I got to add compliments to my,
accolades and compliments. please don't leave here with questions unanswered. So whether you put it in the chat or you want to send it to us or you want to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear your voice as well. You're welcome.
Yeah, cheers. I'm happy to hear that it was thorough and informative. Cool.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you because I was thinking about reaching out to my recommenders now, but I didn't want to be too early and like try to rush them or anything. So it was nice to like hear confirmation to go ahead with it.
Yes, run with it.
Thank you, Amber. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, thanks, Noel, for the shout out in the chat there. Okay, so we do have a question from Rochelle. Is that, if that's not the correct pronunciation of your name, please correct me. But the question is, perfect. So I saw that there's at least 2 recommendations that should be academic. I've been out of university for about 6 years and have more professional contacts that I could more readily ask and who could speak better to my character. Would 2 professional and 1 academic be appropriate? Certainly for IRT, like the short answer is a resounding yes, like hands down, no questions asked. For the purposes of your IRT application, which is 4 weeks away, right? Like the answer is yes. So just to get that out of the way and say that, I think, assuming you're admitted to IRT, you could have a more robust conversation with your IRT advisor about, are these also appropriate for graduate school? You could like really get into the nitty gritty of those relationships. If you introduced yourself, let me see if I have the field that you were pursuing earlier. I don't think you did earlier in the chat, which is fine. But I'll just say generally for a PhD, someone who would be pursuing a PhD, the emphasis on having academic and scholarly recommendations is a lot higher. So if you're pursuing a PhD, it might be worth it for you to start thinking about now, are there some like loose, weak academic connections in my network that I could start to foster now, so that by the time I need a letter in November for my PhD applications, I could actually have 2 academic recommendations, 2 professors. If you're pursuing a master's degree, especially a master's degree in education, you could probably get by with 2 professional letters of recommendation, although IRT will encourage you to identify 4 letter of recommendation writers for the purposes of your graduate school applications, not only because IRT encourages you to apply to a dozen schools, and that's a lot of letters for just 3 people. If you have 4 letter writers, you can spread the burden a little bit across those 12 applications, but also because life happens. And inevitably, we have a scholar or 2 or 3 every year who, for some reason, there are 3 core recommenders. 1 person can't commit to submitting every letter, or submits 2 letters and then, oh, something's happened. My child's gotten sick. I've gotten sick. I'm actually leaving the institution and I'm wrapping everything up by today, and I'm not doing anything else that has to do with this university anymore. People have passed away, throughout this process. So yes, that's my answer, is for the purposes of IRT, absolutely not a problem. Longer term, if you're pursuing a PhD, you should start to think about weaker academic relationships that you could start to cultivate further for the purposes of having 2 academic and 2 professional going into submitting your graduate school applications in the fall. Oh, cheers, ethnic studies, okay. Yeah, yep. So then I think especially it would be worth it for you to think, is there a professor who maybe I haven't spoken to or had any real relationship with since graduating that I could try to cultivate that relationship with again? Or even, could I attend some like webinars or some talks? Should I go to my alma mater's website and see if the professors with whom I took classes are delivering symposiums or seminars online? And could you like start to build up that another relationship in anticipation of having 2 academics ideally and 2 professional?
I'm thinking also another way to perhaps get at this relationship is, could this person help you come up with a short book list, perhaps? You know, particularly if you're feeling like you need to do some additional research that is in reading that is going to inform your statement of purpose, the document that you're going to write to describe why you want to pursue this field, what kind of research you want to do. That may be an opportunity to develop, you know, that relationship or to rekindle that relationship. And it could be reading some of their work as well. And I'd like to read some of your work. And then I'm thinking about, you know, this other area that I have that I feel like I need to plug in. Can you suggest, you know, a few things for me to read? And can we talk about those things, you know, every 2 weeks or once a month over the next 6 months? That may be another way, because professors love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about the work that they're doing, their expertise, as you may. And, you know, it may be the kind of conversation that they're not necessarily getting in their undergraduate courses.
Right.
And it may come to mean a whole lot to them. And I know it will be, you know, important to you as well.
I love that.
So just another thought.
And we did get another question in the chat, so I'll read it for the sake of the recording. Does diversity mainly mean racial and ethnic diversity, or are other components like LGBTQIA+ and gender diversity also relevant for recommenders to comment on? Wonderful question. Appreciate this as this nuance as well. Yeah, in short, diversity is certainly beyond just racial and ethnic diversity, you know, ability, definitely, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, absolutely. Socioeconomic status, even citizenship status,
Religious.
Religious diversity, absolutely. And we've worked with scholars who've specialized in all of these realms in their work in some way or another. So yeah, it really just like any commitment to centering a historically marginalized community, or, you know, uplifting the like voices and experiences and needs and concerns of you know, historically excluded or marginalized community is like completely appropriate. Yep.
Or just that you're going to diversify, you know, this you know, this particular field that doesn't have a lot of brown and Black folk and Indigenous folk, or that the topic that you have is going to diversify that field in a way that has not been imagined before. So diversity in all of its vastness, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with that. That the broadest interpretation of diversifying, really any way you want to challenge the status quo or the establishment, the institution, like any way that there's innovation and a commitment to changing up who is sitting at the table and, you know, whose stories get archived and preserved and all of that, like anyway, yeah, we'll take that. Cool, thank you. These are good questions. Any other thoughts at all? Great. Y'all are so well informed. I love that. Feeling prepared. We're gonna have 3, 6, 7 strong applications submitted in no time. Love that.
Yes, if you haven't gone and done an inquiry form, you want to do that. And then I would also pull up the questions, put those in the Google document or in the Word document, and start to put some thoughts to each of those questions. The hardest part, as you all know, is getting started.
Okay, and many of you have been reaching out, so keep reaching out. We've got a few inquiries to the IRT, to me and Leislie ourselves, and to our generic inbox. So yeah, keep it up, folks. Look forward to seeing you all again next week, and eventually seeing your names come through our desks in about a month's time.
Yes. You all are very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Have a good night.